Here's what you're missing over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
That's what she said.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg's That's What She Said podcast, the show where we discuss the lives of women of Gettysburg. I'm Bethany Yingling.
And I am Veronica Brostensky.
Hi, Veronica.
Hello, Bethany.
This is very exciting.
It is it not? Okay, so a little bit of background. This is, I don't know how we'll come out in terms of chronological. Order. Yeah, but this is our first recording. It's officially here of this podcast we've been talking about, which seems like so long.
Yeah,
right?
It has been a long time. But the great part about it is it's warmer in here today. I can feel all of my limbs.
Right.
I think we're going to do great.
Absolutely. And this material, I'm like a nerd in heaven. I'll just keep it clean. But, this has so much potential and so many potential stories and lives of women and issues of women and things like that we can really cover. And I am just ecstatic to get started with this adventure.
Yeah, this is a whole new way of looking at the Civil War and especially the Civil War in Gettysburg. And I'm hoping that when people listen to it, it spurs them on to looking at new things and researching things they never thought about doing before.
Exactly.
So Fingers crossed, everyone.
Goal number one.
Goal number one.
Well, this will be a successful podcast.
Yes, it will.
If we can spark some interest in some other maybe less known topics and folks, specifically the women, right?
Yes. The women behind the crazy fighting that no one ever talks about.
Right.
So I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
All right. So for today, we have our very exciting first guest. We have Rosanne Zajko. Zajko.
Rhymes with psycho.
Rhymes with psycho. Rosanne Zajko. She is a Gettysburg licensed town guide, a member of Park Watch, a volunteer, and what I am most concerned about, a volunteer at the Children of Gettysburg 1863 Museum, a prolific photographer of the battlefield with beautiful pictures online, and a retired librarian. So we had a whole discussion before she came on about our libraries at home. And I think we're all going to be going home and fixing what we have in our house after talking to you.
But in a nutshell, Rosanne is our kind of chick. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, especially for today's topic.
Awesome.
Don't think you could have picked a better woman to start with.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's pretty... I was going to say kick-ass. Are we allowed to say that? I think we're allowed to say that.
Yeah. But it's not Jenny Wade.
It's not Jenny Wade.
Spoiler.
So today's topic, we're going to talk about Elizabeth Thorn. Most people would know her because of her work as the caretaker of the Evergreen Cemetery. Almost said the National Cemetery. So because of that, she is well known for what she did after the battle, which is a little bit different than some of the women that we're going to be talking about. So before we get started with her life, why did you pick this topic, Rosanne?
Well, for the reason that you just mentioned. Most people know about Elizabeth Thorn's activities after the battle. So, like most of the women that people read about, they're only aware of this one small slice, this one day in their life. But Elizabeth Thorn's story is so remarkable, not only for what she did, but for what she had to go through in the days before the battle. What she had to contend with, not just with the burials, but with her family as well. And I think that the whole point of learning about these women is to see them as a whole person and not just this one little bit that they're mostly known for. And I think Elizabeth's story is very rich with so many details of her life. And that's what I'm hoping we can talk about today.
Yeah, the richness of her life is so underrated.
Yeah.
You never hear about that. So, getting to who she was as a human, what do we know about her life before the battle?
Well, why don't we start at the beginning?
Where was she born?
She was born in Germany and in 1832. And one of the things that I think a lot of people may not realize about Elizabeth, if you are going to put her in the context of American history at that time, and not even women's history yet, but just American history. She is coming to America in the 1850s. What's happening in the United States at this time? There's a lot of anti-immigration sentiment, a lot of nativist sentiment. And, she is coming here at a time where she might not feel welcomed by the country as a whole. But nonetheless, she comes here with both of her parents, and she has a very rude awakening when she gets to America, because depending upon the source that you read, they were robbed before they got here, either on the boat or shortly after they get off the boat. Someone decides to offer their help to cover their luggage, and the next thing you know, they never see it again. So that being said, she still decided that she was going to stay, and comes to Gettysburg by 1854. She is here.
Wow. I don't know why I always assumed she was born here. Was her husband born here?
No, her husband was also born in Germany, and he comes to the United States in the 1850s. He has a background in mining, he's a mining engineer, and he comes here to Gettysburg, and he is here by 1854, and he is working, believe it or not, there was a copper mine here in Gettysburg.
I just heard about that.
Yes, a big secret.
Fascinating story in and of itself. Yeah.
And apparently he was working for that company that was running the mine. And how the two of them met, I really have not been able to find any information about that. But, when she gets here to Gettysburg, just to give you an idea, what is the sentiment here in Gettysburg? The Star and Banner, for example, said that, we shouldn't accept people born outside the United States. They shouldn't be coming here. There was a political parade, a torchlight parade, with banners against immigrants. Now, the thing to keep in mind, though, is that this area was settled first, of course, by the Scots-Irish, and then German immigrants came. But by 1850, only about 10% of the population here were immigrants. So these were children of immigrants, or their grandparents were, but nonetheless, they believed themselves to be Americans, and they were not looking too kindly on anyone coming in that was not American. But nonetheless, she comes here, she meets Peter, and story, they fall in love, they get married. And on the day that they're getting married, all of the church bells are ringing, and she's just thinking it's for her.
Yeah, as you do.
Big party.
Mm-hmm. I would think it was for me, too.
It's your wedding. I mean,
everybody should be happy for me today.
Well, Peter had to set her straight. Sorry, doll, but, it's really the cemetery is opening today. They're laying the cornerstone. And it was on the day of their wedding, which is quite an unusual coincidence, I think.
And Peter couldn't have just let her have the day.
I guess not.
He had to sorry, honey, but no.
Yeah. Oh, and I should tell you, though, before they got married, when she was in Germany, she left behind a boyfriend. And
dun, dun, dun.
I think that
left behind a sweetheart, and she's got to go where her mom and dad tell her to go, and he gets on the boat and comes and leaves him behind, and he shows up later in her life.
Are we fast forwarding to that?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
So they get married.
This is like a Hallmark movie.
This is a cliffhanger, right? We're going to keep people hanging on to find out what happens next.
I need to know. So what you're noticing here is that this woman who comes here from a completely different country into an environment where she's not looked upon nicely, she marries a guy pretty quickly, and here they are. What do they do? What is their livelihood then?
Well, interestingly, I had said that there was a prejudice against immigrants. I mean, you could see it with the 11th Corps. They ran into that themselves. But nonetheless, he ends up getting a job here at the Evergreen Cemetery. So, I don't know, considering the climate and the environment, how he was able to swing that. They were also against Catholics and communists, so he was neither one of those.
Good.
So he didn't have 3 strikes going against him. Maybe only one. Yeah, that's. Oh man!
But by the next year, I believe he became the very first caretaker of Evergreen Cemetery, and he lived there in the gatehouse with Elizabeth and her parents, who were with them for almost their entire marriage.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty prestigious post for somebody who is an immigrant in a town that isn't looking kindly at immigrants. Am I being overly simplistic?
I think I saw somewhere along the line the pay that he accepted was $150 for the year or something, which included the no rent in the gatehouse. But I would assume it's a labor intensive position, right? He's not being elected town president or councilman or something. He's the gravedigger for all intents and purposes, right? So I don't know. I mean, what's your?
I would tend to agree with you. I think because of the nature of the job, it's very physical and it requires a lot of attention. And I think probably it might have been a position that no one else really wanted.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't.
No. Back then too, with
just a shovel
equipment, right? Yeah, right.
It's rocky ground.
A little bit of rocks around here.
But he must have made a good impression.
Yeah, right.
On the
I would think so.
On the supervisors of the cemetery, because he did get the job, and his pay was, as you said, it was about $150 a year. However, that was in keeping with the wages at the time. The wages at the time were about $500 to $600. But because he was getting free rent, he didn't need to have that. It was sort of factored in.
Sure. Okay.
The other thing that he had to do was one or the other of them had to make sure they had a nice vegetable garden, because they had to supplement their diet as well. But it had to be a good-looking garden.
There were standards.
Yes, there were. So, make sure those tomato plants are standing up straight. I'm not sure, but it had to be a good-looking vegetable garden. I hope she had a green thumb.
Now, like a lot of the gardens here in Gettysburg, we know what they were planting. Is that one of the ones that we know? We don't know.
No, just that was one of the requirements that the caretaker had to have a garden.
Had to have a garden. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't want my vegetables growing near a cemetery, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah. Never thought of that.
Yeah.
Of course, I guess they don't know about like groundwater runoff and things like that.
Even think of that, Veronica.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was probably easier to plant a garden than to dig a grave.
Yeah, sure.
In that area.
Yeah.
So this is all pre-war,
Pre-war,
right?
yes.
This is, you said, like maybe mid to late 50s, something like that?
Yeah. Shortly after they got married and he becomes the caretaker, they end up purchasing some land on North Washington Street near the college. And they built a home there because they figured, Mom and Dad would move in there. But they never did.
Wow.
Mother and father lived on the other side of the gatehouse. And then they shortly sold that house a couple of years later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were trying to build a house so their in-laws would be away.
Yeah.
I get that.
They were on the north side, and Mom and Dad were on the south side. And, people think, there was that arch in the middle, and they could just walk across the top. No. We went from one side to the other. You had to walk out the door, walk across, and go in. So there was no connection between the two sides of the gatehouse.
That's interesting. Yeah. I've often heard that we just assume there's like a little walkway or something at the top if you get up to but yeah. So you're saying that was never really that.
No. And it was very small.
Okay.
When you look at it, it's not that big.
Well, there have been additions put on over the years, but at the time that they were living there, there were only like 2 floors and a cellar. And there was a bedroom on the second floor of their side, and I think she did her kitchen was in the basement, the cellar as they would call it at the time, and I think the cemetery office was on the south side. So I'm not exactly sure how that all worked out with her parents, but that's the setup that we know about today.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about? I'm sorry. Do we know anything about the parents? Like, did they ever learn to speak English? Did they?
As far as I have been able to determine, no. Oh. There is a situation that occurs later, another cliffhanger, with her father not being able to speak English.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, her parents weren't the ones living in the gatehouse, right?
No, they were.
What about his parents?
No, his parents, I guess they were back in Germany somewhere. Her parents, she comes here to America with her parents.
With her parents.
And they are,
he does not.
Correct. His parents are, I don't know.
Yeah.
If his parents were there or what.
They're kaput.
They're kaput. Okay. I can't imagine coming across the ocean by yourself and just picking up and, Elizabeth comes with her parents so that she at least has some family here to fall back on if anything crazy should happen.
Subscribe to our Patreon channel for exclusive early access to our new show, That's What She Said, a podcast about women in Gettysburg and the Civil War, hosted by Bethany Yingling and Veronica Breztensky. Go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg.